Join your host, Maddie Roche, as she brings you into a community of fee-only financial advisors who are successfully building profitable businesses that serve the next generation of clients. Learn from innovative advisors whose unique stories will inspire you to dream big and take action on your goals. Are you ready to live your best life and help your clients live theirs? Then you're in the right place.
Hello, and welcome to episode 318 of XYPN Radio. I'm excited to talk with Danika Waddell today, owner of Xena Financial Planning, a longtime follower of XYPN Radio, yet a relatively new entrepreneur. As you'll hear today, Danika has experienced rapid growth in her firm and serves over 60 clients in just her first 13 months. You may all be wondering, what is her secret? But as we explore today, you'll hear that it comes down to knowing your strengths and weaknesses and creating a dream team to help you stay sane and serve your clients. Danika discusses how she relies and leverages her community, her centers of influence, and coaches to help her stay on track and sane. She talks about the nuances of pricing in Washington State and what she expects to change in her firm in the future. But what I love most about this interview is the softer side of how Danika approaches her firm, how she takes care of herself, embraces the abundance mentality, and is so deeply motivated by making financial planning accessible to more people. If you're interested in how to hit the ground running when you launch your firm, then this episode is going to be for you. An event made just for fee-only advisors? Yep, you heard that right. It's XYPN Live. And with over 45 content sessions, 3 keynotes, a one-of-a-kind exhibit hall day, and networking opportunities galore, it's the game-changing event you've been looking for. Join us in November, in person or virtually, and leave with knowledge, new connections, and a whole lot of inspiration to accelerate your progress and smash your goals, no matter where you are in your advisor journey. Visit xypnlive.com for full details and to grab your pass. Also, be sure to go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to join our private group just for XYPN Radio listeners. It's a community of advisors we've all been looking for. That's there to provide support when we need it the most. Best of all, it's free. I encourage you to check it out. Again, that's xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP. Hello, Danika. How are you? Welcome to XYPN Radio.
Hi, Maddie. I'm very honored to be here. I've been listening to the podcast for many, many years, so it's really exciting to be here.
Oh, that's great. I love when members say they've been listening for a number of years, because this is your opportunity to tell our listeners what you've built. So why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself and your firm?
Yeah, my name is Danika Waddell. I have a firm called Xena Financial Planning. So I launched July of 2020, just a little bit more than a year ago. The firm is fully virtual, so I have clients scattered all over the place, but primarily Seattle-based. So I would say probably about 80% of my clients are local. And I think I just hit 63 clients. So that's where I'm at. My niche is women in tech and women business owners. I'm gradually losing the women business owners focus just because there's so much demand in the tech portion. So I'm going to sort of move away from that and focus a little bit more specifically just on women in tech, but that's the niche as it stands today.
Wow. And congratulations on the growth. To be in business just around a year and to be at 60 some clients, that is a lot. I want to ask you how you do it and how you prepared to do it. But let's walk back in time just a little bit, because as we prepared for this podcast, you mentioned you never thought you would be an entrepreneur. And I know we have listeners out there who also don't think that they're ready to be entrepreneurs. And I'm interested in your journey becoming one.
Yeah, it's quite a circuitous route, I feel, that got me where I am today. So I am a career changer. I've been in the industry for 7 years. I never had any intention of launching my own firm. So that was not on my radar really at all. But I had a bit of a crisis at my former firm that sort of began around February of 2020. So there was an event that happened, somewhat traumatic. And after about 3 months, I finally said, I think it might be time to do my own thing. So like I said, it wasn't something that I had been thinking about. I really had no desire to start my own firm. But because of what happened at my former firm, I decided, well, I think maybe I have to give this a shot. So that all, came to a head, I would say, last May. So I quit my job and incorporated Xena Financial Planning and, signed up with XY right away. And then finally launched last July. So it was definitely not what I had planned, but it's been, I don't know, 1,000 times better than I could have imagined.
Ooh, I love hearing that. You said you were a career changer. What were you doing in the first portion of your professional career?
Mostly corporate finance and accounting. So my degree was in math. I had no idea what I wanted to do with that. I ended up trying teaching for a little while. I taught high school on the East Coast, and that was not quite what I wanted to do. And then I just sort of landed in some accounting roles and ended up doing that for over a decade. And what was actually kind of nice about that was that I got a lot of exposure to company benefits plans. I administered 401k plans. So there was actually some pretty relevant experience that I got there, but it just ultimately wasn't terribly satisfying.
Interesting. And how was the transition into being a financial planner? Were you working directly with clients and getting that kind of relationship that a lot of our financial planners crave?
Not right away. And I think that was one of the hard parts about switching is that, most places aren't going to put you in front of clients on day one. And so I had to put in, I don't know, a year or two of work before I was really able to have my own client relationships. And also I think the big challenge when you're transitioning is that, I was used to being fairly successful at what I was doing. And then all of a sudden you come in and you're the new kid in the room. And so you're just much more junior than what I was used to. So that part of it was a challenge for probably a couple of years before, I started to have my own client relationships and I was treated as more of a professional, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. How did you know starting your firm was a possibility? And why was that what you fell back to when faced with challenges at your existing firm?
I mean, I knew it was a possibility because I'd been listening to this podcast for 5 or 6 years. So I'd heard so many stories of people that had, gone about it different ways, but had been successful. So I knew it was a possibility. I think the reason that I decided to launch my own firm when I got to that sort of crisis point was that I looked around at other firms in Seattle. I thought of maybe I should just get another job at a different RIA. And I really didn't see anything at all like what I wanted to do. Certainly in our local market, there's a lot of firms that are really focused on high net worth individuals. So it's very common to have a $1 or $2 or $10 million minimum. I actually know somebody here that has a $25 million minimum. And I was just sitting around and kind of going like, that's not what I want to do. So I did really consider going to just work for somebody else. But I just couldn't see something that was representative of the way that I wanted to practice. And it didn't take me very long at all to come to that realization. I had a very quick look and I was like, nope, this isn't doing it for me. I'm going to have to do my own thing because then I can do exactly what I want.
Wow. And who was it that you really wanted to work with and how was it that you wanted to work with them?
I've landed on the niche that I mentioned. It's not so much about women in tech for me. I mean, that's a really natural thing just in this market. I'm very comfortable with it. It's very easy for me in a lot of ways, but it's not like I'm, jumping out of bed every morning to help somebody with their RSUs. So it wasn't that like the technical part of it so much. I knew that I wanted to narrow the range of people that I worked with because at my old firm, it was, people who are 22 and people who are 75 and just every possible life stage and career and situation. And that was just a little bit, it was hard to stay on top of all those different things from whether it's regulatory, things like Social Security and RMDs at the same time as dealing with people with student loans. Like I knew I didn't want to work with, sort of a population that spanned multiple different decades and all of that. So I knew I wanted to narrow it to say 30 to 50-ish in terms of age. And then beyond that, like I said, really women in tech was just a natural fit for me, but I do love working with people in tech, but it could have easily been educators or something else. I don't think there was anything special about that particular niche for me.
I'm interested in kind of this jumping off point that you had at your last firm, and you'd once described it as comfortable. And now you really have tasted the feeling of being in real alignment with your life and your work. And I'm wondering, you alluded to not really knowing it was out there. And I guess, can you speak directly to the listeners about how do you set the bar even higher for yourself when you think you've already kind of achieved it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's a lot of questions in that question, Maddie. So let me see if I can kind of touch on a couple of things there. So first of all, I think in terms of being comfortable, I absolutely was very comfortable at my old job. I really liked what I did. I loved my clients. I loved the people I worked with. We did great work for our clients. Like, I had no complaints. It was very satisfying. So, I mean, there was no problems there up until there was a problem, of course. But I do think when you get comfortable, you don't grow. It forces, being uncomfortable forces you to do something different, to look at new solutions to a problem. Mm-hmm. So I think being too comfortable is not great for long-term growth, for sure. But when I got to that point and I was, like I said, decided that launching my own firm was the way that I wanted to proceed, I had very low expectations after listening to, I've heard a range of people's experiences on this podcast, but some people have 10 clients their first year and some people have 40. And it's like, okay, well, I'll be satisfied with, a very modest number. I was thinking maybe 10 to 20 clients in my first year, something like that. And it's not even about the number to me. It's just about the way that my message is resonating with people. I mean, I really am seeing so much interest in what I'm offering. And it's just it was hard for me at the time of launching to imagine being this successful in the sense of having so many people that want to work with me, basically having to turn prospects away because, I have like a 3 or 4 month waiting list at this point. So yeah, I think I could go a few different directions in terms of what you asked, but I guess I didn't really allow myself to expect this kind of success after a year. Like, I had a very low bar, which I think is reasonable to sort of say like, okay, well, I don't want to set my sights so high that I'm, bound to fail. But I just had no expectation that it could possibly be as successful as it has been.
Wow. And talk to us a bit about that success and how your first few clients went, and when was it that you really felt the ramp up period? Because you're right, the benchmarking surveys that XYPN conducts, it shows that 1 to 1.5 clients per month is what a typical advisor can expect. And I'm wondering, what your walkthrough kind of experience was like that, and then we can get into some questions about what you think were some of the most important moves you made. But was it immediate? Were people knocking at your door the second you launched?
Pretty much. It was kind of immediate, actually. So, and I've pretty consistently onboarded, 3 to 5 clients every single month. So that's how I got to 60-ish in 12 months. It's been very steady. Mm-hmm. There have been some definite, upticks and stuff like that, just in terms of, being in different media publications or things like that have gotten me, a little bit of an influx in demand, but it has been pretty steady. And so, yeah, I don't know what I can say about that other than it did start pretty quickly. And I think some of that even was building prior to me launching, like people that, I left my old firm in May, I didn't launch until July 31st. And I had several people that were emailing me saying, let me know as soon as you're registered, like I'm ready. So I had some demand pretty much right out of the gate. And, there's a lot of things I can attribute that to, but certainly, I have a really good natural network in the Seattle area. So I had, some CPA and attorney folks that were referring clients to me, again, before I even launched. So, and that's been steady throughout.
How do you work with centers of influence like that? Did you write them a letter? Did you call them, invite them out to lunch? How did you let people know that you were in business?
I think kind of a case-by-case basis. There was not necessarily like a press release or anything like that. And of course, it was COVID time, so I wasn't, taking people out to lunch. But I do have a couple of really well-established relationships with some local professionals that in some cases have a lot of synergy with my target market. So, an estate planning attorney that works with people in their 30s and 40s, many of whom are in tech, that's a great person for me to cross refer to. So yeah, I didn't necessarily let people know across the board, hey, I'm in business, but just sort of reaching out one by one and really nurturing those relationships, which I've been doing for years. I also get a lot of referrals from local advisors. So again, because we have these really high minimums in our area, I've been getting referrals from local advisors, before I even started my own firm, just people that don't, they get somebody that doesn't meet their minimums and they know that I don't have a minimum and, they'll send them my way. So that's been pretty consistent for quite a while.
Mm. I'm interested in how you kind of strategize your quarters. And a year goes by so fast. And sometimes we just all of a sudden find ourselves a year in and it's been working. What kind of working on the business do you do in a consistent way?
Not enough. It's funny because I just listened to last week's podcast with the guy who runs the EOS program for XYPN, and it had all sorts of wheels turning in my head about, how to systemize some of my processes and how to scale. I do have, just quarterly time blocked off on my calendar for strategic planning, things like that. I've worked with a business coach from day one.
Interesting.
So I have, I definitely have some strategic planning, I guess, that I do around the business, but it's not as formalized as I would like it to be. So I think doing something like EOS is definitely in my future, but I haven't quite gotten to that level yet.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned a business coach. What prompted you to get a business coach so early? And is it worth the investment?
I think it was for me. I don't know that that's true for everybody, but I'm not a great process systems type of person. So actually creating some of the workflows and things like that, it's just not my natural ability. So I hired somebody really early on that, is a business coach, but is particularly focused in that area.
Nice.
So she's really skilled at operations in general. And that was incredibly helpful for me because that's just not my strong suit. So I really, I delegated really early. And I think that's been a huge help because I know what I'm good at and I know what I'm not good at. And so I very quickly pulled in people to help me in the things that I'm either not good at or I don't like.
For you to have done that early could be probably one of the best things you could have done, is to get off some of that work that drains people and weighs people down. Do you have a couple examples of the things outside of process that you feel like you're not good at or you just don't love?
I don't love compliance for obvious reasons. So I hired the compliance, or I'm working with compliance coaching, and started doing that earlier this year, which has also been really helpful. It's just not something I want to spend a lot of my time on, but I also want to know that it's in really good shape. Like I want to have a great compliance program, but I just don't want to spend a lot of my own time building that. So working with somebody on compliance has been great. I hired a virtual assistant fairly early on, which has also been really, really nice because things like doing client notes and meeting notes and things like that, agendas, it's just, that there are better uses of my time, basically.
Wow. I'd love to stay on that topic for a moment. How do you leverage that virtual assistant? Are they in client meetings with you?
She does not sit on client meetings with me. But she does prepare all of my agendas. She doesn't actually do my notes, but she goes through my notes and pulls tasks out of my notes and puts them in Wealthbox. And then she stays on top of me with the tasks and says, don't forget this task hasn't been done yet. So, just from an administrative standpoint and with 63 clients, it's hard for me to stay on top of all of the tasks. So it's been really great to have somebody who is sort of monitoring where people are in the process. And then she does a lot with onboarding. So, when I'm first starting to work with a client, doing all the data entry, getting everything put into right capital, things like that. So it's been an incredibly good investment to have her helping me.
Totally. Is she implementing the processes your business coach and you have built, or is she coming to the table with process already?
She's mostly implementing. I mean, I think there's a little bit of back and forth with our relationship, but she doesn't have as much experience working with other advisors. So, I don't think she brings as much in terms of helping me build the processes, but she's working on, sort of developing, written instructions for everything that she does do so that we have everything really clearly documented.
Wow, I love this little dream team of a group that you have supporting you. And I think that that's the only way you could scale as quickly as you have. I'm interested in this idea of you doing it alone. I mean, do you feel like you're doing this alone, or have you really built the support that you needed?
A little bit of both. I do feel supported for sure. And so that is both with, the people that I've hired and also with the community at large, both XY and NAPFA. I'm very plugged into both of those communities. Definitely would not have made it this far without those two communities. Like the amount of support is incredible. There's multiple people just in my cell phone that I can call or text at any time and just say like, hey, I need some help, or can I, run something past you? So I really would not be here without those two communities for sure.
I love that.
But that said, I do think that running a business is lonely. So, I mean, I do feel a little bit alone in that sense. And my long-term goal is to partner with somebody. So I really don't want to stay a solo business owner. Just don't think that really suits my personality. And I would be much happier to have an actual business partner at some point. So if you're out there.
Wow. Well, watch out. You may have some phone calls after this.
I might.
Talk to me about the ideal balance that you and a partner would have. Is there a role that you would really want to dive into more?
I think, much to my surprise, business development has turned out to be something that I'm very good at. So that's a natural thing for me to focus on. Again, like to my point about not being terribly operations focused, having somebody that's a little bit more detail oriented. I mean, I am detail oriented, but not so much on the process side of things would be nice. But yeah, I think just somebody who complements the strengths that I bring would be a really nice balance.
Yeah. I want to go back to this dream team of yours. You've mentioned compliance, business coach, VA.
Mm-hmm.
What else and who else is in your sphere of influence?
I think that might be it in terms of hired sort of support. I don't think I'm paying for anything else. Like I'm doing my own books. That's super easy for me. I don't think I have any other paid providers. But like I said, the community itself might as well be paid because it's incredibly valuable.
Totally. I ask because I think a lot of the reason folks are hesitant to outsource early or seek out a coach is revenue. They want to wait till they're at a point where they can afford it. Can you talk a little bit about what you prepared for in terms of starting your business and the runway you gave yourself? And how soon did you hire those folks? And did you use revenue from the company to do it?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. I definitely used revenue from the company. I'm trying to remember how much money I put into the business at the beginning. I think I loaned the business $25,000 from my, personal savings. And I've given myself some of that back, maybe 10 or 15, and everything has been paid out of the business since day one. Good. I do actually have one other, and I'll talk about when I hired those people. One other person I just remembered, they're kind of lumped with the virtual assistant, but I have some marketing support now, which is recent.
Okay.
So I'm working with Nifty advisors. And so within that, I have this virtual assistant, but I've recently added some marketing support, and that's just another person within Nifty. But as to when I hired my business coach, I think in September.
Wow. So
very, very early. Mm-hmm. The virtual assistant started in January. And compliance coaching, I signed up for compliance coaching very early, but I had to wait. So I think that started probably about 6 months ago.
Wow. Great. Outside of marketing, is there someone else that you want to add to the dream team outside of that business partner?
Well, I just made my first hire.
Oh, you did? Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I hired my first W-2 employee who's starting later in September. And she'll be half-time to start and probably will be taking over quite a few of the things that the virtual assistant is doing, but we'll see how that shakes out.
Totally. At XYPN, we kind of talk about our business phases, and that scaling is that phase that it's not client numeric, it's not a number of clients that necessarily pushes you over into it.
Mm-hmm.
It's the feeling of I can't do this alone.
Mm-hmm.
And we encourage, of course, outsourcing early on, but when we think about can't do this alone, it really means have you hired someone to assist you in a W-2 sense or something like that. When did you feel that?
At
Day
least
one?
6 months ago.
How recently?
It took me a while I probably could have hired about 6 months ago, or that was when I was really starting to have a lot of difficulty sort of just keeping up. Capacity has been my issue for quite a while, and I'm definitely there now. Like I've turned off all new appointments. I can't even talk to prospects right now, at least for a couple months. But I think it did take me a little while just to sort of, think through all of the things that I needed to really address with hiring. And I'm still figuring them out. There's, all sorts of things like registering for payroll in another state. And, there's just a lot of logistics. But I knew that I needed to do this probably several months ago, and then actually implementing it. And I went through some of the stuff in XYPN Academy. There's courses now about, what to think about when you're hiring and background checks and where to go and all these different things to do. So that resource was really helpful. But yeah, I think it just took me a few months to get comfortable with the idea of hiring, because that's scary. It was scary launching, and now it's like, now I'm hiring, and now I have to be able to support somebody else's income. So yeah, I dragged my feet a little bit on that.
Totally. Did you ever think you would be a manager of people?
I've managed people in the past, not in financial service. So since I've changed careers, I haven't managed people, but I have managed people in the past. I like managing people. So that part of it isn't super intimidating to me. It was more about making sure I have enough revenue to support another person's livelihood.
Totally. I want to shift gears a little bit and talk about how you serve your clients. Due to the fact you're in the state of Washington, the monthly retainer model isn't as welcomed with open arms as other states. And how have you pivoted? So I guess just talk a bit about what you faced and how you've managed.
Yeah, I think when I was first launching and registering last spring, there was a lot of hesitation about introducing, something that I knew would not pass Washington's regulatory bodies. So I've, pretty early on just decided to kind of go with the path of least resistance and just do what I knew would get me registered as quickly as possible. So I just went with a straight hourly model. And in some ways, that was natural for me. My old firm that I was at for 4.5 years before starting this company, that was also straight hourly. So it was a world that I was very comfortable with. I'm very used to tracking my time. I don't mind doing that at all. So in some ways, that was very easy. And I did, in fact, get registered very quickly. So from that perspective, it worked really well. I will say that I don't anticipate staying hourly. Yeah. So, there are some challenges with hourly from a variety of perspectives, but I probably will be looking at shifting to something like a flat fee. But yeah, we're just, we're limited with what we can get away with in Washington, or not get away with, but yeah, what they'll allow.
Why haven't you shifted to a flat fee, or why didn't you start with a flat fee?
I think it was mostly just because I wanted to get registered as quickly and easily as possible. And also I think from a pricing perspective, I just really didn't know how to think about that at that point. I didn't know how many hours per year I might spend with a client. I just didn't know how to set the rate other than looking around at other people and saying, well, this person over here is charging $5,000 a year. Maybe I should charge $5,000 a year. I just didn't know enough about what service I would be offering, how much time it was going to take, all of that. So it was just hard for me to price.
Have you figured out what the typical hourly engagement looks like for a woman in tech?
There's a pretty big range. I do think depending on the type of stock they have, whether or not they're pre-IPO, there can be a lot of complexity. And if it's just straight RSUs, they work at Amazon and they get RSUs, it's actually not that complicated. So, there's a pretty broad range, but I'm just at the point, because I've been in business for 13 months, I'm just starting to complete a full year with my very first clients. So I have a huge sample size yet, but I can certainly start to look at, as I've been working with people for a full year, how many hours did I spend. The nice things about time tracking and billing people hourly is I can very clearly say, yeah, I spent 18 hours working on this client and 24 hours on that client.
Wow. Have you faced much churn with your clients given hourly?
Well, of the 63 that I've signed up, 5 of those were short-term projects. So those people were never ongoing clients, but no one has left. I will say one of the challenges with hourly is that there's not an incentive for people to schedule meetings with me. So, I can say, oh, we're supposed to meet quarterly, but if somebody just keeps pushing their meetings out, well, they're not paying me anything. So,
right.
So none of those people have formally canceled, but at the same time, I can look and see a couple of my clients maybe have gone 2 quarters without meeting with me just because they keep saying like, oh, I'm too busy. So that's one of the things that I want to try and address with a change in fees is that, people are a little bit more incentivized to meet with me if they're paying something.
Totally. And you do charge an upfront fee, don't you?
I do charge an upfront fee. It starts at $3,000.
Okay.
So that covers, let's say 10 hours, $300 an hour of the first quarter. And then it shifts to, I bill them quarterly at the end of each quarter based on how much time I've actually spent. So that's where I'm not having a trouble with people in the first quarter because they've just paid me $3,000 or $4,000. So they're very motivated. It's once they shift to, I bill them at the end of each quarter based on actual time. That's where I'm starting to see people, less inclined to set up their meetings or just kind of consistently rescheduling.
There's so much complexity to fee structures and how you do it and the benefits and the pros and cons and things like that. When clients email you, say, instead of scheduling a meeting, are you billing for what it takes to do that research on that question?
Sure.
Great.
Yeah. All time is billable.
Yeah.
That said, if I'm researching something that applies to all of my clients, they don't get billed for that. So, if right now there's all this stuff happening with Washington long-term care insurance, I've spent tons of time researching that. I'm not passing that on directly, but yeah, if somebody reaches out to me and says, hey, I'm thinking about this, or I have this new benefit at work, can you weigh in? Yeah. If I'm spending 20 or 30 minutes looking into something and drafting an email back to them, yeah, that does get passed on.
Great. How much time are you spending kind of learning the technical nuances of working with people in tech? I imagine it's kind of an ever-changing landscape. It requires a lot of your brain to stay up with it. How do you segment your time to make sure that you are doing that appropriate research?
I don't think there's that much to stay on top of. I have a pretty solid base of working with people in tech over, several years of working at RIAs in Seattle, where there's tons of people in tech. Pretty much, you can't go 5 feet without bumping into somebody that works at Amazon. So I feel pretty solid in most of the basics for sure. ESPPs and RSUs are all very straightforward. I do think there's enough, sort of unusual situations that are coming up with, every IPO is a little bit different. There's all sorts of things happening with direct listings and just, there's lots of unique situations, I would say, that are coming up. And one of the great things that I've done over the past year is just getting involved in a study group that focuses on equity comp and working with people in tech. So we meet every single week. We went through a whole bunch of course material from mystockoptions.com at the beginning. Once we worked through all that, now we just bring case studies every week. That's been great. As I'm going through, I went through an IPO with a couple clients in July, and I brought the information to the team, and we or the study group, and we strategized together. So it's been super helpful to, also get exposed to the different things that each of us is working on.
Oh, I love that. And that goes to the power of your network, that you have people who are familiar with the type of clients you work with that can help with tough questions.
Exactly.
You mentioned loving business development, and I think this is a real testament to the incredible work you and other advisors do. It's so deeply needed in our world right now. We have never been at a point where folks need an advocate for their finances more, quite frankly. What are you sensing among the people that are booking calls with you? And why do you feel like business development is feeding your kind of purpose?
It's interesting. I think one of the the best investments I made really early on was in my website, which is another topic. But I mean, it was expensive, but it's a great website and it's very clear what I do. And I think it gives a really good sense of what it's actually like to work with me. And so by the time clients actually get to a prospect call with me, I mean, they're ready to go. They're so excited. They're like, oh my gosh, I've been looking for this. Oftentimes they've met with a couple other people before talking to me. And 9 times out of 10, they're like, oh my gosh, you blew the other people out of the water. Because what I find is that, with the traditional AUM model, like I met with a prospect recently who told me that she had interviewed 2 other advisors and they basically asked her, how much money she had, like what accounts do you have and where are they? Because they're trying to assess, whether or not she was going to generate enough income for them to work with her. And so, we had this like 30-minute prospect call. And at the end of the call, she just said to me, you haven't even asked me how much money I have or where it is. And I said, because I don't care. But she was like blown away that I didn't even ask her, like, how much do you have in your 401k and how much do you have in an IRA? She was like, and so, I mean, I think the process of meeting with financial advisors can be very dehumanizing. I mean, to just have like a dollar symbol attached, just come in like with a sign, here I am, this is how much money I have, will you work with me? I just think that's a terrible experience. And so I think when people come and have a prospect meeting with me and it's like, we're talking about all these other things, like what's important to you and, whatever, what's keeping you up at night. And they're just like, wow, you actually A, listened to me, and B, you don't care how much money I have. So it's been incredibly easy to convert because I think people are having such terrible experiences out there interviewing other advisors that when they come to me, they get to my website, they kind of see who I work with. I oftentimes get people who are in the LGBTQ community or people of color, and they're like, oh my gosh, I'm just so relieved to have found somebody. I don't have to explain to you what it's like to be a woman of color at Salesforce, because you get it. And so I think just the process is so terrible that it's been really easy for me to explain what I do and how much better it is to work with me than the average person.
So beautiful. Well said. What do you ask for clients or prospective clients before the meeting? Do you have an intake form? Are you gathering data? Nothing.
Yeah. I know everybody has a different process. I actually don't ask for any information. I really just want to get to know people. Right. I ask, I think 3 questions in my Calendly scheduling, which is kind of like, where are you in the process? How did you hear about me? And what are you looking for? Or something like that. I can't even remember what the 3rd question is, but it's very, very basic. And I think that, again, there's so many hurdles that we put in place before people will meet with us. And it's like, you have to submit all of your statements and all of your this before you can even talk to somebody. And so I really wanted to just make it a little bit of a less intimidating process.
Totally. I love that idea of kind of normalizing needing help with finances and it not be about once you have a bunch of money, you can then get help. Like, what about everyone else? How do we ever?
That's why XY exists.
Right. How do we ever serve anyone if you don't make it available to them and in a fee structure that works and is understandable? I mean, I think so many people are still really confused with the AUM model, and not that that's a bad model at all, but how do you even explain it to a client? But what I'm so intrigued by is that so many people are finding websites like yours and other XYPN members and saying, ooh, I deserve that. Ooh, it's accessible enough for me to get there. Any other thoughts on kind of your approach to getting people in the door?
I mean, to be honest, I do a lot of prospect meetings that don't end up, maybe they aren't the best fit. And I'm actually trying to maybe refine my process a little bit around that. But I also see it as a service. And sometimes I tell people, you do not need to work with a financial planner right now. Here's 2 or 3 things you can go home and do, come back and see me in 2 years. So I do see that as a little bit of just sort of, pro bono service time for some people. But yeah, I think just the website and some of the other materials that I have out there do mean that I get generally qualified prospects, and I haven't had to do a lot of work around that. But I also love just having that available for people. Like you do get a free half an hour. You might have to wait a while to talk with me, but it is a free half an hour. And sometimes I do just give people some advice and say, like, I think you'd be better served just going and doing these things, or maybe working with somebody who charges a lot less than I do.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Love that. You've had one heck of a year, plus COVID, plus all the rest of life. What are you doing to stay sane, my friend?
Therapy.
Let's talk about that.
Yeah. I started working with a therapist sometime last year. I think the whole transition to relatively successful entrepreneur, my head is still spinning from that. And yes, all of the COVID and other things that are going on, but that's been a really valuable exercise for me. I'm very big on exercise and being outside. So being out in the mountains or just going for a run, those are pretty much essential for my mental health. And then I love community. So, whether it's other financial advisors or, friends that are local to me, I get a lot of support from the people in my life that, just lend an ear when I need it.
Mm. Have you felt like you've been able to care for yourself more now that you're an entrepreneur than you've been able to in the past?
To a certain extent, yes. I mean, it's really nice to be able to take a Friday off and go skiing. It's really nice to be able to, stop work at 2:00 because I need to go do a school thing with one of my kids. So having that ultimate flexibility is incredibly nice. But the downside of that is, I haven't had great boundaries around when I do turn off. It's like, oh, well, I can work at night and I can work on the weekends because everything is just seamless here. My business and my personal life are kind of very well integrated, but it does make the boundaries a little bit harder for sure.
Do you have any boundaries as you go into this new year that you want to set up for yourself?
Well, I'm trying to keep one weekend day free. So even though I'm totally fine with working on the weekends, I know that doesn't work for everybody, but like I said, I'll take flexibility during the week.
Yep.
And, if that means I have to put in half a day on Saturday, it's fine with me. But having one day a week off is definitely a priority. So there have been months when I have worked Saturday and Sunday pretty much every weekend for a while. And I definitely don't want that to be the norm going forward. And it's really important for me to take vacations and really unplug. So that's part of hiring, is knowing that I can do that.
I love that. What would you say has been the most challenging part of your year?
Probably capacity issues and just sort of staying on top of everything. It's just been such a whirlwind because I've grown so quickly and because it started right away. It's just been hard to stay on top of everything. So I maybe should have put the brakes on new business a while ago. And I didn't do that, but I'm trying to be a little bit more cognizant of that going forward and just not say yes. I don't say yes to everything, but say yes to even less, because I can't do it all for sure. So yeah, I think just the pace has been really hard to keep up with.
Yeah, I'd imagine that at the rate you were growing, it's very easy to say yes to the new business, especially if they're showing up, and setting the boundaries with yourself that, no, I can't take more than 2 clients this month is especially hard. It sounds like you have put up that wait list now.
Oh, I've had a wait list for many months, actually. And I'm getting a lot better at saying no. I mean, I do say no all the time, actually, to prospects. I have no problem saying, you'd be better served by this other XY plan. I mean, I send people to other planners all the time. So I don't really have a problem saying no to prospects, but I do. It's almost more projects and other things that are coming up. I'm on a board and I'm on a women's initiative committee. I mean, I have all these other things that I'm doing, and I've gone through the kinder training this year. So it's just like, it's kind of too many things, I think, sometimes. So I need to sort of say no to some of those things. It's like, I mean, I want to continue to learn. And so I want to, and I want to give back. So I want to do all of these things, but it's like, I can't do them all at once. So it's more almost external projects versus actually saying no to prospects, because that I'm pretty good at.
Right. Yeah. What would you say is your major goal for your firm? It sounds like to partner, but is it to serve a certain group at a certain size, at a certain price point? How do you think about your big why and where?
I do feel really passionately about accessibility in our industry. And so I have a really, strong drive to reach more people. And so I don't quite know what form that's going to take yet, because I'm probably going to change my pricing fairly soon, and it's probably going to go up. And that means I'm going to be less accessible to, people that can't afford to pay that fee. So I have a couple ideas. Well, I have multiple ideas. But I do want to grow to potentially multiple advisors. I definitely want to partner. Those are on my short list of things that I'd like to see happen with the firm. And I'd like to have some kind of offering, whether it's a podcast or a book or something that is available to people that don't have the means to pay the fee. So, and then the last thing that I really want to do is I want to create jobs. So I think it's so hard to get into this industry. It's so hard to find firms to work for. And so I want to make this a place where people can come and learn to be an advisor. So, only small goals.
Yeah, no, it's so good to think about them though. And it does sound like you've really begun putting the building blocks into place to get there. And congratulations on that. As we kind of round out this podcast, I'm wondering, what didn't you know that you know now that maybe some of our listeners may need to know?
I kind of knew a lot about what it actually took. I mean, there's so much value in listening to the archives of this podcast, or, being on the Facebook group and just participating in the conversations and listening to what other people are going through. Like my eyes were wide open about what I was getting into. But I do think, and we alluded to this before, I just had no idea what I could actually pull off. And so I think for everybody else out there, just knowing, I'm not saying you set yourself a really unattainable goal, but knowing that you can do more than what you think you're capable of. I think we just all have so much more to give. And I think when we're called upon, like, we step up to it. So that's how I've felt over the past year. It's just like, okay, I have clearly what I'm doing. My message is resonating. Like, I have stepped up to that plate in a way that I didn't know that I could.
Congratulations. Congratulations. Last question. Any books that stand out, podcasts that you listen to that have changed the way you think about your business, how you approach your business, anything like that?
Not so much on the book side. I probably listen to way too many podcasts, but this is definitely one of the most impactful in terms of, just really thinking through all the different aspects of getting business going. I do love some of the things like Brendan Fraser's Human Side of Money, I think is his. Some of the sort of behavioral stuff is really fascinating to me. Hannah Moore has a great podcast, the FPA, that's another fun one for people just in terms of different career paths and how people have gotten into the industry. I listen to all of them, honestly. I can't get enough of I love storytelling, and so just hearing everybody's stories it's enriching to hear, all the different perspectives and different ways of thinking about fees and, all these different strategies. So it's one of the most important things that I've done over the past several years in terms of career development.
As strong and as successful as you are so humble in your interest in collecting as many good teammates and resources and people and inspiration. And I think that's almost the perfect mix. You do need to be confident. You do need to know you're about to go do something hard and get through it. But over and over and over again in this interview, the theme of relying on other experts to help bring you up and make sure you're serving the clients in the best way keeps coming up. And I really admire you for that. And congratulations on your growth and what you're doing. I have no doubt you're making major impact. And I can't wait to have you back on the podcast in a couple of years for a check-in when you tell me that you're an employer of many wonderful financial advisors and giving great benefits packages and all that good stuff. Any final words, Danika?
Yeah, I just want to echo that again. I just think that we all benefit from working together, and I want to see all boats rise. We're all working together, and we're all bringing this fantastic service to, a greater audience.
Well, I've learned a lot. I know our listeners are certainly going to learn a lot from this interview. You've really painted a beautiful picture of what it takes and how to do it successfully. I'm honored to work with you, Danika, and thank you so much for joining us on XYPN.
I have been very honored to be here, Maddie. Thank you so much.
An event made just for fee-only advisors? Yep, you heard that right. It's XYPN Live. And with over 45 content sessions, 3 keynotes, a one-of-a-kind exhibit hall day, and networking opportunities galore, it's the game-changing event you've been looking for. Join us in November, in person or virtually, and leave with knowledge, new connections, and a whole lot of inspiration to accelerate your progress and smash your goals, no matter where you are in your advisor journey. Visit xypnlive.com for full details and to grab your pass. Be sure to join our VIP community at xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP to hang out with other XYPN radio listeners, ask questions for future mailbag episodes, and finally, to find a community of like-minded financial advisors. Thank you so much for joining me today. We'll see you next time.
You are not alone and you are not crazy. It's scary starting, building, and growing your own financial planning firm, and that's why we put together a free private community just for you, the Cutting Edge Financial Planner. Go to xyplanningnetwork.com/VIP or text XYPN Radio to 33344 and join a network of thousands ready to change the lives of Gen X and Gen Y clients.